Most men believe they are being controlled by women because women are manipulative, emotionally complex, or intentionally strategic. They assume control comes from her words, her moods, or her behavior. But that belief is comforting because it removes responsibility from where it truly belongs. The truth is far more uncomfortable. She does not control you because she is powerful. She controls you because you surrendered your center. Control is never taken by force in relationships. It is handed over slowly through fear, overinvestment, and emotional reactions you did not know how to regulate. And once it is handed over, it becomes invisible. You stop noticing the moment you began adjusting yourself to keep her calm, keep her interested, or keep her from pulling away. That is where control begins. It starts the first time you ignore your instincts to avoid conflict, the first time you change your behavior to manage her emotions, the first time you stay silent when something feels wrong because you fear losing her. From that moment on, the dynamic shifts quietly. She learns that your emotional state depends on her responses. She learns that tension makes you anxious. She learns that withdrawal makes you chase clarity. And without malicious intent, she begins leading the emotional direction of the relationship. This is not manipulation. It is conditioning. Most men do not realize this is happening because it feels like love. It feels like care. It feels like being emotionally invested. But love that requires self-abandonment is not connection. It is submission. And submission always creates control. When a woman senses that you fear losing her more than you value yourself, she no longer feels grounded in your presence. She feels responsible for the emotional balance. And when a woman becomes the emotional regulator, respect erodes and power shifts. This is why so many men feel confused in relationships. One day everything feels balanced. The next, she is distant, testing, unpredictable, or emotionally dominant. And the man believes she changed, when in reality, the structure changed. She did not become controlling. You became reactive. Every time you overexplain, you give up ground. Every time you chase reassurance, you reinforce her position. Every time you tolerate behavior that violates your standards, you teach her how much control she has. And the most dangerous part is this. The more controlled you feel, the more you try to fix it through effort. More attention, more communication, more emotional availability. And every attempt to regain control through effort gives away even more power. This video is not about blaming women. It is about understanding why emotional control exists in the first place. It is about recognizing the invisible habits that hand over authority in a relationship without ever being discussed. Because the moment you stop reacting, stop adjusting, and stop negotiating your self-respect, something shifts immediately. Control dissolves when emotional dependency ends. And in the next section, we will break down the first hidden mistake men make that gives women control without realizing it, and why stopping it changes the entire dynamic fast. Before we start, a quick reminder. The real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube. It happens inside the community. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset completely. It's not just a course, it's a brotherhood, a private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. You don't join for a month, you join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits. Just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, and purpose, click the link below. Join the community. Enroll once. Grow forever. Let's dive in. Section 1. The first hidden mistake that hands her control instantly. The first mistake men make that hands control to a woman is not weakness, neediness, or lack of confidence. It is far more subtle and far more common. It is making her emotional state your responsibility. The moment you begin managing her moods, you step out of your masculine center. You start monitoring her tone, her energy, her reactions, and her silence. You adjust your behavior to keep things smooth. You say less when she is distant. You say more when she pulls away. You become careful instead of grounded. And that is where control begins. A woman does not need to manipulate a man who regulates himself. Control only works on a man who reacts emotionally. When your peace depends on her approval, her attention, or her consistency, she becomes the emotional leader without ever asking for it. This happens early, often disguised as care. You try to be understanding. You try to be emotionally intelligent. You try to avoid unnecessary tension. But avoiding tension at the cost of self-respect creates imbalance. When you silence your truth to keep harmony, you teach her that your boundaries are flexible. And flexible boundaries invite testing. Women test not to dominate, but to understand structure. When you adjust every time she withdraws, she learns that distance gives her power. When you over-explain after conflict, she learns that confusion makes you chase clarity. When you tolerate disrespect to keep the connection alive, she learns that your standards collapse under emotional pressure. This is not strategy on her part. It is feedback. Your reactions train the dynamic. The man who holds control does not manage her emotions. He manages himself. He allows her moods to exist without chasing them. He allows tension without rushing to resolve it. He does not fix emotional discomfort with words, gifts, or reassurance. This is why emotional stability is more attractive than emotional effort. Once you stop taking responsibility for her emotional state, the dynamic recalibrates immediately. She no longer feels that she can move you emotionally at will. She feels that you are present, but not dependent, and that presence restores respect. Control disappears when reaction ends. Section 2. How over-explaining and justifying yourself gives her power. One of the fastest ways men lose control in a relationship is through over-explaining. It feels harmless, it feels logical, it feels mature. But emotionally, it does something destructive. It places you in a position of defense, and the moment you defend yourself emotionally, you have already given up leverage. Over-explaining usually begins when tension appears. She becomes distant. She questions something. She reacts emotionally or unpredictably. Instead of staying grounded, you rush to clarify. You explain your intentions. You justify your actions. You walk her through your thought process so she will not misunderstand you. But what you are really doing is seeking emotional permission, and permission is power handed away. A man who explains himself excessively communicates one silent message. Your emotional approval matters more than my internal certainty. Women do not feel safer when a man over-explains. They feel that he is unsure of himself. Confidence does not narrate itself. Stability does not require justification. The more you explain, the more you imply that your position is fragile. This is where control deepens. She learns that discomfort makes you talk. Confusion makes you chase clarity. Emotional pressure makes you collapse into words. And once that pattern is established, she does not need to argue or demand. She only needs to withdraw slightly, and you will do the rest. Over-explaining also kills polarity. Masculine presence is felt, not argued. When you turn every emotional moment into a discussion, you shift the relationship into negotiation mode. Negotiation removes tension, and without tension, attraction fades. This is why many men feel like they are walking on eggshells. They are not being controlled directly. They are controlling themselves to avoid emotional friction, and that self-monitoring drains authority. A grounded man speaks when something matters. He does not speak to be understood. He speaks to be aligned. If alignment creates disagreement, he allows it. He does not chase agreement to feel secure. This does not mean being cold or silent permanently. It means choosing words deliberately, not reactively. It means knowing when silence is stronger than explanation. When you stop justifying yourself, something shifts. She feels the loss of leverage immediately. She no longer knows how to move you emotionally, and that uncertainty restores balance. Control does not survive clarity and restraint. Section 3. How emotional reactions and validation-seeking trap you in her frame. Control becomes permanent the moment you start seeking validation instead of alignment. This is where most men lose the game without realizing it, because validation-seeking often disguises itself as emotional openness, honesty, or care. Every time you react emotionally to her behavior, you hand her information. You show her what moves you, what unsettles you, and what makes you chase reassurance. And once those emotional buttons are visible, the dynamic shifts quietly in her favor. When she pulls back and you feel anxious, you react. When she becomes cold and you seek reassurance, you react. When she questions you and you rush to defend yourself, you react. Reaction places you inside her frame. Her frame is the emotional reality where she sets the tone and you adjust. You wait for her signals. You interpret her moods. You let her emotional temperature decide your behavior. And once you are inside her frame, control is automatic. Validation seeking deepens this trap. You look for signs that you are still wanted, still valued, still safe. You ask indirectly through behavior. You give more attention. You increase effort. You become emotionally louder. And the more you seek validation, the less valuable your presence feels. Because value is not proven by effort, it is proven by self-containment. A man who does not need validation does not fear silence. He does not fear emotional shifts. He does not fear disapproval. His identity is not negotiated through her responses. And because of that, his presence feels grounded and difficult to control. Most men think control comes from dominance. It does not. It comes from emotional independence. The man who can experience tension without reacting owns the moment. The man who needs reassurance gives it away. This is why women often escalate behavior when a man stops reacting. They test not because they want control, but because they are checking whether the structure is real. If you stay calm, consistent, and aligned, the tests lose power. Validation seeking also creates a dangerous feedback loop. The more you seek it, the more unpredictable she becomes. Unpredictability keeps you engaged emotionally. Engagement keeps you reactive, and reactivity keeps you controlled. Breaking free requires one internal shift. You stop asking whether she approves and start asking whether you approve of yourself in that moment. That question realigns everything. Your words change. Your energy stabilizes. Your presence becomes firm. Control dissolves when validation is no longer needed. Section 4. How to exit her frame and reclaim control without confrontation. Most men believe the only way to regain control is through confrontation. They think they need to call things out, demand respect, or assert dominance verbally. In reality, confrontation often reinforces the very dynamic they are trying to escape. Control is not reclaimed through force. It is reclaimed through frame stability. A frame is the emotional and psychological reality you operate from. When you are in her frame, her moods, reactions, and expectations define your behavior. When you are in your frame, your values, standards, and emotional regulation define your behavior, regardless of her state. Exiting her frame begins the moment you stop reacting. You do not argue with her emotions. You do not chase clarity. You do not defend your intentions. Instead, you remain aligned with yourself. This shift feels subtle, but it is powerful. When you stop reacting, she loses the ability to move you emotionally. And when she cannot move you, control fades naturally. There is no fight. There is no power struggle. There is simply nothing to push against. Consistency is the key here. One calm response does not change the dynamic. Repeated calm responses do. You must become predictable in your stability. Whether she is warm or cold, present or distant, your emotional posture remains the same. This consistency sends a clear signal. You are no longer adjustable. Another critical element of exiting her frame is decisive boundaries without explanation. Boundaries do not require emotional justification. They require calm enforcement. When you state what you will or will not tolerate and then act accordingly, the frame shifts automatically. For example, if behavior crosses a line, you do not debate it. You reduce access. You disengage briefly. You do not punish. You simply remove yourself from what does not align. That action speaks louder than any conversation ever could. Women feel this deeply. When a man exits her frame, she experiences a loss of leverage. She may test. She may escalate emotionally. She may question the change. These reactions are not signs of failure. They are signs that the dynamic is adjusting. If you remain grounded during this phase, control continues dissolving. Reclaiming your frame also requires internal discipline. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop monitoring her reactions. You stop interpreting silence as meaning something about your worth. Your attention returns inward, where control always belonged. The man who controls his attention controls the relationship. This section matters because it shows that power is not something you take back. It is something that returns to you when you stop giving it away. Section 5. The final trap that pulls you back under her control. The final trap is not obvious, and that is why it works. It appears after you have already reclaimed control, after you stop reacting, after you stop over-explaining, after your frame feels stable again. This is the moment where many men unconsciously give everything back. The trap is seeking emotional reward for your strength. Once a man regains his center, he begins to notice changes. She becomes warmer. She reaches out more. She shows interest again. And instead of staying grounded, he takes this as confirmation that he is finally doing it right. That need for confirmation is where control slips back. The moment you start adjusting your behavior to maintain her renewed interest, you are back in her frame. You become careful again. You soften boundaries. You increase emotional availability to keep the momentum alive. And without realizing it, you return to managing her emotions instead of managing yourself. Control does not return because she is manipulative. It returns because you became outcome dependent again. A man who is truly in control does not change his posture when she leans in. He does not reward interest with overinvestment. He does not accelerate connection to secure certainty. He allows attraction to rise and fall without chasing it. This is the difference between earned respect and borrowed validation. Borrowed validation feels good, but weakens you. Earned respect feels calm and stable. When you no longer need her response to confirm your strength, your behavior remains consistent. And consistency is what dissolves control permanently. Another version of this trap is emotional confession. Men suddenly share everything they have been holding back. Realizations, feelings, vulnerabilities. Vulnerability can be powerful, but only when it is grounded. When vulnerability is used to create closeness quickly, it becomes emotional pressure. Pressure reactivates control. The man who stays free understands this simple truth. Strength is not proven once. It is lived repeatedly. You do not get to relax your frame because things feel better. Your frame is who you are now. When you stop needing emotional rewards, control has nothing to attach to. This section matters because it explains why some men briefly regain control, only to lose it again weeks later. They fixed behavior, but not orientation. They still look to her for emotional confirmation. True freedom arrives when you stop looking outward for proof. Section 6. The one internal shift that ends emotional control permanently. The final shift that frees a man from being controlled is not something he does outwardly. It is something he stops needing internally. This is the moment when the entire dynamic collapses for good. The shift is this: you stop needing emotional certainty from her. As long as you need to know where you stand, how she feels, or what comes next, you are still vulnerable to control. Even if you act calm, even if you say little, even if you appear strong. Need always leaks, and women feel it without being told. Control survives on uncertainty combined with emotional dependence. When you finally release the need to resolve ambiguity, something powerful happens. Her moods stop mattering. Her distance stops triggering you. Her warmth stops intoxicating you. Not because you stopped caring, but because your center no longer lives inside her reactions. This is where most men fail to arrive. They want control without letting go of outcome. They want respect while still needing reassurance. They want to feel grounded, but only if she stays consistent. And that contradiction keeps them trapped. The man who ends control understands a simple truth. Clarity does not come from her words. It comes from his standards. Instead of asking, "What does she want?" he asks, "Does this align with who I am?" Instead of monitoring her behavior, he monitors his self-respect. Instead of adjusting to keep the connection alive, he allows misalignment to reveal itself. This internal posture changes everything. When a woman realizes she can no longer move you emotionally, control dissolves. She may test. She may escalate. She may withdraw or lean in. But none of it changes your behavior. And when behavior does not change, power has nowhere to attach. This is not indifference. It is sovereignty. A sovereign man is not cold. He is calm. He is present without attachment. He gives without fear. He walks away without resentment. And that balance makes control impossible. The deepest irony is this: when you truly stop needing control, you regain it. Not over her, but over yourself. And self-control is the only form of control that actually works in relationships. At this stage, the outcome no longer defines you. Whether she stays, leaves, tests, or disappears, your direction remains unchanged. And that stability is what women respect most, even if they never say it. This section matters because it completes the transformation. Control did not end because you learned tricks. It ended because you stopped participating in the emotional economy that allowed it to exist. Section 7. The rule that keeps you uncontrollable for life. There is one rule that separates men who are occasionally respected from men who are never controlled. It is not a tactic. It is not a mindset trick. It is a way of orienting yourself in every interaction, regardless of who you are dealing with. The rule is simple, but most men violate it daily. You never trade your inner stability for external approval. Every time you feel the urge to explain yourself, to chase clarity, to fix tension, or to adjust your behavior to be liked, this rule is being tested. And every time you fail the test, control quietly re-enters the dynamic. Men who remain uncontrollable do not ask, "How do I keep her interested?" They ask, "Am I acting in alignment with myself right now?" That single question changes everything. When your actions are aligned, you do not rush, you do not overgive, you do not perform emotional labor to earn peace. You allow discomfort to exist without trying to manage it. And that tolerance for discomfort is what creates emotional authority. Most men believe strength is about intensity. It is not. It is about containment. Containment means you can feel attraction without chasing it. You can feel uncertainty without resolving it. You can feel the possibility of loss without trying to prevent it at all costs. And when a man can do that, he becomes impossible to move emotionally. This is why women instinctively respect men who seem calm even in moments of tension. Not because those men do not care, but because they are not controlled by what they feel. Their emotions exist, but they do not dictate behavior. Living by this rule also means accepting consequences without resentment. If alignment leads to conflict, you accept it. If it leads to distance, you allow it. If it leads to separation, you walk away with dignity. Because your peace was never dependent on her response. And that independence is felt immediately. The man who lives by this rule does not need tricks. He does not need silent strategies or psychological maneuvers. His presence alone sets the tone. People either align with him or remove themselves. There is no middle ground where control survives. This is the final transformation. Not becoming dominant over others, but becoming sovereign over yourself. When your inner world is no longer negotiable, the outer world adjusts naturally. In short, she never controlled you because she was stronger, smarter, or more manipulative. She controlled you because, at some point, you handed over your emotional center. You adjusted yourself to avoid loss. You reacted to avoid tension. You sought reassurance instead of alignment. And those small choices quietly shifted the entire dynamic. Control was not created by her behavior. It was sustained by your reactions. The moment you stop reacting, stop explaining, and stop needing emotional certainty, the structure collapses. You no longer live inside her frame. You operate from your own. And when a man lives from his own frame, control has nowhere to attach. This does not require confrontation. It does not require dominance. It requires self-leadership. The ability to experience uncertainty without chasing clarity. The ability to feel emotion without outsourcing regulation. The ability to walk away from misalignment without resentment. That is masculine strength. When you reclaim your center, something subtle but powerful happens. She feels the loss of leverage. She senses that her moods no longer move you. And whether she leans in, tests, or pulls away, your behavior remains the same. Consistency destroys control. The deeper truth is this: the man who cannot be controlled is not the man who resists. He is the man who does not need. Need is the doorway control enters through. When that door closes, manipulation, testing, and emotional dominance lose all power. This lesson extends far beyond relationships. The same principle applies to work, friendships, and life itself. Whoever controls your emotional state controls your decisions. When you reclaim that authority, you reclaim your freedom. Control ends the moment you choose alignment over approval. And once you do, no one ever owns your center again. Remember, knowledge means nothing without action. If you're ready to rise above emotion and lead with purpose, join the community today at the link below. Enroll once, grow forever.